what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the show. So, got a few things to talk about, but also a few updates. Let's talk about Tyrone Woods' truck first and foremost. I got the ball rolling with that. The ball is rolling forward. I just got in contact with a guy named Bill Brown, former Navy SEAL, who runs these swims in, I believe it's a harbor out of New York. I'm not a SEAL, so I wouldn't know that. And there's no way, Bill, you're going to get me to swim because Green Berets don't swim. If you got a boat team, a SWIC boat team, I'll do that. I've used them for infills before, and they're very good at what they do, and that's dropping off Green Berets to their target. Why you guys swim? But Bill, through Chris at Survival Dispatch, is facilitating some meetings moving forward, hopefully with the Navy SEAL Foundation, to do as much good as possible, to optimize the good with Tyrone Woods' Ford pickup truck. If you're not familiar with the story, I apologize. I should have let off with that. But the story is a gentleman reached out to me who had purchased Tyrone Woods' pickup truck prior to his fateful September 12, 2012 Benghazi deployment. Now, he's a former Navy SEAL, once a SEAL, always a SEAL, but a former Navy SEAL. And he was killed on a rooftop with Glenn Doherty when they were both working for the CIA in GRS, the Global Response Staff Office, under the Office of Security in Benghazi, Libya. Now, this is near and dear because the same guys that operated with Glenn and Tyrone that night were some of the guys that recruited me for that specific job. One of the best jobs I've ever had, full of former team guys, some of the best shooters in the world, and very competent human beings. Senior, competent human beings. A great job. That vehicle, that truck was in a vehicle accident. It was actually hit at an intersection when the guy's son was driving it. He's fine, but he offered it to me because they were just going to scrap it. And I have a close connection with vehicles, as you could see from the background, my shop, because there's a close connection that you build with your children, with your family, in building these things, and there's a legacy that's left behind. There's memories that are imprinted, the smell, the sound of the door closing, the sound of the engine, your hair blowing in the wind, and thinking about your father, your mother, your family. And so I think it's a good way to tell Tyrone, Glenn, and these guys' story, not politicizing it, but talking about who they were, and then building this truck to raffle or to auction. Now, the coolest thing is yesterday, through Chris at Survival Dispatch, I'll link Survival Dispatch's Substack below, but great human being. We got to link up with a company called Carnivalt, which is one of my favorite freeze-dried whole meat, whole food companies. There's lots of camp food out there, but this company does just the meats, pork, chicken, and their beef is insane. It's awesome. All made in the USA and freeze-dried. So you could take a 25-year shelf life food, constitute it with water, cook it, heat it up, and it's amazing. It's what I use for hunting, overlanding, all the things, because I don't want to eat all that sodium-packed crap when I'm camping, when I'm doing anything really with my family. They offered to sponsor the truck, the build, no strings attached, which I think is amazing. I think it's awesome. So not only are we going to build it, we're going to put it on display, we're going to do media behind it, tell these guys' story, and we're also going to raffle it, give it away to raise money for the families that are left behind. So I'm putting that out there as an update because the ball is rolling forward. My buddy Danny just sent me some videos of the frame and some of the damage. Next step is to have it sent to a local mechanic, likely in Idaho. And then we're going to continue to roll the ball forward and advise you or inform you guys, so military, inform you guys what's going on. So if you want to potentially buy this truck, you can, right? Also, I did a podcast yesterday on the Epstein files. If you're like me, you're outraged. You're upset. one of the promises made by the administration was they were going to be transparent, more transparent than ever before. And they were going to tell us the truth about the perpetrators that were violating these children. Because you have Maxwell, who's in prison for 20 years for trafficking, according to Pam Bondi, 2,500 victims to no perpetrators. And the only perpetrator they're calling out is dead. And so it's very confusing because you go, well, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch of people who've been named. They've been on the logs to fly to this island, Epstein Island. And there's a whole bunch of inaccuracies as they come out after they already said they were going to be transparent and release the files. For example, I don't know if you guys knew this, but Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell, was a Mossad asset. He wasn't a Mossad agent. He was recruited by Mossad. Also, which is very controversial, how did Epstein get his money? Where did that money come from? How do you become a multi-hundreds of millionaire out of nowhere? You're not a manager of a hedge fund. You don't have ties to investment portfolios, but you're spending and have access to hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, the founder of Victoria's Secret was in this guy's hip pocket, so he did have access to a billionaire's funds, but he also had a very robust social network, a network that had genres like government, finances, royalty, U.S. presidents. Like, how do you get Bill Clinton to come to your house and fly to an island with no background, no company, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of it? You're in the thick of it. Also, this story with the video, this Commodore 2000 that it was apparently recording in 8-bit, this entire scene that skipped a minute every evening because they're using Atari 2000 technology. It makes absolutely no sense. And so how do you have somebody that's in prison for 20 years for trafficking, yet you don't have any named perpetrators? And the most disappointing thing is Bondi, Patel, and Bongino, all three of them that were so transparent and so overt with the way they were communicating how we're going to release all this information, all of a sudden say there is no information. It was a conspiracy theory. What was a conspiracy theory? This is not a left-right issue. This is a perpetrator versus victim issue. And most of these victims are children. And I love the narrative they're running off of, like, we can't release the victim's information, abuse material. Nobody's asking for abuse material. Slow down. And in fact, just stop. Stop talking. Nobody's saying that. You're just manufacturing lies, which is what people do when they're caught in a bad spot. You just start making things up because you know the truth. You don't want to get to the truth, so you make up lies. Nobody's asking for abuse material. What we want, what the people want, is accountability from elites. Actually, accountability from people we put in power that were supposed to be accountable to elites. They were supposed to tell us who these people were because there's no way that Bill Gates was flying to the island to do business consultations. And how come these guys are getting away with it? We're not one perpetrator besides the one who apparently killed himself in a minute gap in the video, which I think is comical. I personally think, and I said this on the podcast, I'll link that down below. It's called the Mike Force Podcast. I think he's still alive. I think he was an asset, multinational, which happens. One guy's, in 2008, when he was rolled up by the FBI and was charged with what he was charged with, he served 13 months. And then he was let out early on good behavior. And then in 2008, several people, according to the FBI, said that he wasn't to be questioned because he belonged to the intelligence community. I'm paraphrasing, but he belonged to intelligence is what they said. So what are we even talking about? Trump Jr. himself, during the campaign, was saying, there's many lists I want to be on, but I don't want to be on that list. And we're going to have accountability. And every single person in the administration, including Trump himself, said there was going to be accountability. And there's none. Everybody says, Patel goes on Rogan and says, if I knew, you don't think I'd say something? Not now, because I think you're lying to me now. So it's a huge issue. One of the things I wanted to harp on is this new bill that's being proposed by Josh Hawley. I believe he's a senator out of Missouri. And if I got that wrong, I apologize. I don't track Congress and senators specifically to state. But Hawley's aggressive. And he's proposed this bill that basically bans the Chinese or any foreign adversary from purchasing land next to installations. But let's go through this and what this means, but also the problem already exists because the CCP has completely infiltrated our food supply, which hurts my head. Hurts my head. So you have a circumstance where we're saying, hey, we should probably have a law on the books that says the Chinese can't buy land near military installations. So, wait, are you saying that they are already allowed to buy land next to military installations? The CCP, the Chinese? Technically we went to war with the Chinese in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, where tens of thousands of Americans died. So you're actually saying right now that the same country that started this virus to infiltrate our country, the same country that's sending the precursors and ingredients of fentanyl to Mexico to the cartel to kill America. Wait, they're allowed to buy land now? Yes, they're allowed to buy land. Well, that just means obviously that we can go over to China and buy. No, you can't. Oh, okay, it's just one-sided. Yes, it's one-sided. So yeah, that probably needs to be a law. But why is any adversary or any foreigner, for that matter, allowed to come into our country and buy land? It makes absolutely no sense. So why is not one representative in Congress or the Senate saying, hey, time out, full stop. This has to stop. This is insane. Okay, let's get into it because this is really important. In 2013, the WH Group, a Chinese conglomerate, bought Smithfield Foods for the biggest acquisition in history, a $4.7 billion acquisition of the largest pork producer, not in the U.S., not in one state, not in the U.S., in the world. According to the news, it controls 26% of the U.S.'s pork market. So 1 out of every 4 pork chops that you eat, 1 out of every 4 pieces of bacon that you eat is coming from China. It owns, as part of that portfolio that WH Group invested in buying this conglomerate for $4.7 billion, it owns 500 farms, dozens of facilities, and millions of pigs. It also holds water rights and processing plants in Iowa, North Carolina, Missouri, and Virginia. The deal was approved by CFIUS with little public debate. This was the largest Chinese acquisition of a U.S. company in history. In history, guys. Like, what? So wait a minute. A quarter of an entire meat industry is owned by the CCP that's feeding Americans, where the Chinese have access and placement with the land, which is over 380,000 acres, with 500 farms and facility to infiltrate and do whatever they want. I mean, you could plug in any kind of disease, virus, whatever, or just pull the plug and grossly impact our food security. We have no resilience. We have no self-reliance because we're depending on capital investments into our food industry and food supply from the Chinese. On top of that, the Canadians, for example, own 12 million acres in the U.S. I think that's an accurate statistic. What are we doing? Who is profiting off of this? Obviously, if you follow the money, there's somebody in American government who's profiting off of this, which is why nobody's doing anything about it. And this is what Trump doesn't understand. This is what we voted for to vote against. We are tired of the elites controlling every single aspect of our lives. Why is Ibogaine, which I talk about in part 2 of the podcast I did with NASA, who's this Green Beret named Eric's wife. Again, Mike Force podcast, we talk about a situation where her Green Beret husband has post-traumatic stress, is in mental health crisis. Nobody in Utah in the justice system is doing anything about it. We have some good officers at Wasatch County that are helping her and helping the situation, but their hands are tied because they're dealing with a corrupt justice system. And we're dealing with a corrupt state. I think the entire state of Utah has deep-seated corruption. And I'm about to let the cat out of the bag. You have no idea. Books, documentaries, you have no clue what's about to happen because I'm about to go on an information campaign to educate the world with what's going on in Utah. Oh, did you know Utah leads the country in cloud seeding since 1951? Yeah, over 70 years. The most investment in it. You know why? The snow peaks, the snow industry. But they're putting chemicals in clouds that are pouring snow down on children. And there's no public debate about it. I digress. But this deal was the largest acquisition of a U.S. company in history. And overnight, a foreign adversary owned a major portion of America's meat supply. Oh, I didn't mention this, but I'll plug Carnivolt's website down below. And I'm very thankful to Carnivolt for providing the support to Tyrone Wood's truck. That's amazing. But like these guys are utilizing pork, chicken, and beef from small farms and ranches across the country, getting back to the grassroots of things. That's how you prepare. I'm doing a segment on taste testing different types of bug out food. It's called Bug Out Taste Test. But if you don't have food and water stockpiled because you're depending on this system that's infiltrated by the CCP, you're making a mistake. Now, I'll educate you guys on that. I'll be doing segments for my Patreon and the underground version of this on patreon.com/Mike Glover, which is linked down below. But foreign ownership creates risk in 4 major ways. I mean, supply chain manipulation is a huge concern because if food production prioritizes foreign markets as a priority over American markets, and they manipulate the pork industry, it's going to hurt farmers and ranchers in America. The argument, I already could hear it in the background, the argument is, well, they're employing Americans. I don't care. I don't care. I'm sorry. Why is there not one billionaire conglomerate? Why is there not one American conglomerate looking at this and going, this is unacceptable? Let's put our heads together. Let's see how we can acquire and procure pork, beef, and chicken and keep it American. I mean, Carnivolt's doing that. Again, I'll link it down below. Another thing is price influence. If you control the market because you have a monopoly, you dang near have a monopoly on it. So what is the CCP thinking? What kind of meetings are they having? Because food production and control over the supply can artificially raise domestic prices, especially when you own a quarter of the entire space. Actually, it's more than a quarter. With 384,000 acres, 500 farms, 26% of the overall U.S. pork market. And that's probably a whack statistic. It's probably more than that. Strategic sabotage. I mean, potential to disrupt logistics or contaminate food during conflict is a real thing. You think This virus that was advertised, created in a wet market a mile down the road from a lab where there's all this collusion and corruption and influence. You don't think it's possible for them to have access and placement here through TikTok, through farms and ranches, through food supply, to do something malice? It fits into their national security plan. And we're just allowing it to happen. If you're a constituent, which you are, as a law-abiding citizen, you got a representative in Congress and 2 senators in your state, and you're not blowing them the hell up over this travesty, over this deep-seated corruption of some lobbyists lining their pockets because they're working for the CCP? Insanity. Lastly, water resource access, because they have access to irrigation rights. I have to answer to the town and the county of Wasatch where I have 0.25 acres of water rights on my property. These guys just pulled up in a pickup truck in my driveway and were like, Mike, we see you have a garden hose that's running. Okay. Are you guys policing up garden hoses in Wasatch County? Well, no. We just saw it running and we didn't know if you knew it was running. Like, yeah, I knew it was running because I turned it on. Well, in Wasatch, you're not allowed to have open water running. And I look across the field, my neighbor's field, which he's growing hay. He's got a horse back there. No harm, no foul. And he's pumping 100 gallons a minute out of a spigot this thick, feeding on a sprinkler system this field of hay. Which, hey, that's what you do, because you want to grow hay, you need water and sunlight. We got plenty of that. But my garden hose, which is 1 inch wide, running water to irrigate a little patch of my field where my goats are, that's being regulated by the government. Yet nobody's regulating the CCP owning 500 farms and a quarter of the entire production of pigs in this country? Dude, this is for sure a simulation, guys. This is for sure a simulation. You can't make this stuff up. Foreign entities gain long-term access to aquifers and rivers. If you have access to an aquifer or a river, it takes a couple drops of the wrong thing with malice intent to destroy an entire... I mean, you can kill hundreds of thousands of people, by the way. But to contaminate the water, it takes a couple drops. And we're okay with that. We are. It's not speculative. We are okay with that. It's a double standard. Because if you look at the supply chain and you look at our ability and self-reliance to retain anything on our own, partially because where we live between the Atlantic and the Pacific, that helps us security-wise, but we've been infiltrated because we've subbed and outsourced everything. So this independence we need to gain back as individuals, as families, and for sure as states and countries, it's insane that we have to have this conversation. Canada owns 12 million acres. So does Netherlands, Italy, UK, Germany, Saudi Arabia, UAE have significant parcels. Why is that a thing? We put it out. Rogan and all these guys. I'm very proud of this. Cameron Haynes, Steve Rinella, all these guys put it out. And I think because their opinions in public discourse, they were able to convince Mike Lee, a senator who proposed this in Utah, ironically, to sell off hundreds of thousands of acres of land. If we're not willing to sell off hundreds of thousands of acres of BLM or national forests, why are we willing to sell farmland to foreign adversaries or foreign countries, period? I don't even care if you're not an adversary. I imagine we got a good relationship with the UK. But I don't want a Brit coming in here owning parcels of land in America. Now, if it's a negotiation because we can, as Americans, go over there and own land, which we can, by the way, then I'm okay with that. But to take an adversary, it's like China, it's insane. So China bans foreign ownership of land, period. That's their rule. Zero tolerance, by the way. Zero tolerance. They restrict U.S. companies from owning or controlling interest in Chinese agricultural or food assets. It sounds like the Chinese have their stuff together. So they're banning their children in China off TikTok for certain hours because they know how it destroys a child's mind and development. We're facilitating TikTok, which is still owned by the Chinese, in America to be a portal and an access of information and data and surveillance by the hundreds of millions. And we're okay with that as well. We sell them our farmland, our food systems, and let them operate unchecked. I mean, whoever struck the 2013 deal to WH, to the Chinese, should be in prison. My final thoughts on this is, look, I'm not fear-mongering here. It's reality. America's for sale, and hostile actors are buying. A federal ban on foreign ownership of farmland should not just be for adversaries like China, for land that's next to military installations. That should have never happened. It should be complete and total. Total and wholehearted. Zero tolerance. There also should be greater transparency. The information that I'm just discovering, I highly doubt that you know. You might be tuned into this. I'm the preparedness guy, and I didn't even know some of these statistics. You don't have to wear a tinfoil hat to be concerned about this. You just have to care about sovereignty. And that's what it boils down to. How are we supposed to... we've lost complete trust in government and local, state, and government institutions because they're fatally flawed because they're being ran by people who have their own incentive structures. What say you? I'm off to the underground because there's a lot of things that I want to say that I can't say, and I'm being further suppressed, by the way. I don't know what's going on with the tubes, but massively being suppressed with all of the tracked analytics on my channel. I haven't grown one sub in weeks. Not one. The videos that I've done, I could see the analytics and I could tell it's not being recommended, which is why I started both my Substack and most active, my Patreon. It's available down in the links below. I'm headed off to the underground. I appreciate you guys. Let me know your opinion on what you think and what should be done. Unacceptable. Until next time, peace out, guys.